Imagine you are standing in a palace. The year is around 1500 AD. The walls are made of stone. Torches burn along them. The air smells like smoke and roasted seeds. A servant walks in. He is carrying a golden cup. Inside the cup is a dark liquid. It is thick. It is foaming at the top. He kneels before the Emperor Moctezuma and hands it to him. Emperor drinks. Then something strange happens. The cup is never used again. It gets thrown away or melted down. It's because no one else is allowed to drink from a cup that touched the emperor's lips. That drink was not wine. It was not beer. It was chocolate. And for most of its history, it was not a candy bar. It was not a treat for children. It was one of the most guarded luxuries on earth. For almost 3,000 years, chocolate belonged to kings, to priests, to warriors, and to gods. So ordinary people were not allowed to taste it at all. Today, chocolate sits in every gas station and every grocery store. It costs less than $1. Nobody thinks twice about it. But that is a very new idea. For almost all of human history, chocolate was rare, sacred. It was dangerous to even touch if you were the wrong person. This is the story of how a bitter, secret royal drink slowly made its way down from a golden cup into a candy wrapper. It is a much stranger journey than most people realize. Our story starts long before kings and empires. It starts in the hot, wet lowlands of what is now southern Mexico. See, around 1500 BCE, people called the Olmec lived there. We do not know much about their daily lives. Their history is lost. But archaeologists have found old pottery from this time. On some of those pots, scientists found a chemical called theobromine. This chemical only comes from one place, the cacao tree. So somebody, 3,500 years ago, figured out something amazing. Inside the strange, football-shaped pods of this tree were seeds. And if you fermented those seeds, dried them, roasted them, and ground them into paste, you got something worth drinking. Nobody wrote down what that first cup tasted like. We will never know. But whoever discovered it treated it like something holy. It's not like food, like magic. And that idea that chocolate was somehow more than just a drink followed it for the next 3,000 years. Centuries passed, a new civilization rose in the same region, the Maya. And for the Maya, cacao was already sacred. We know this because of their art. Paintings on pottery show kings and nobles drinking cacao at feasts. Some of that pottery even has writing on it, and that writing spells out the word for cacao. This makes it one of the oldest written food words in the entire Americas. The Maya did not drink chocolate the way we drink hot cocoa today. It was often cold, or at room temperature. Not sweet. It was often bitter, mixed with chili peppers, vanilla, and ground corn. Sometimes a flower called the ear flower was added, giving the drink a strange, perfumed taste. One trick made it special. Servers would pour the drink back and forth, from one cup to another, from high up in the air. It created a thick foam on top. That foam was the most prized part of the whole drink. The higher the foam, the better the host looked in front of his guests. Chocolate for the Maya was not for everyone. It was for kings sealing treaties. It was for warriors coming home from battle. It was for priests speaking to their gods. And it was even for the dead. Sometimes, when a Maya noble died, his family buried him with a cup of chocolate so he would have something to drink in the afterlife. Archaeologists have actually opened Maya tombs and found these cups still sitting beside the bones. Thousands of years later, the Maya even had a myth about where chocolate came from. They believed a feathered serpent god found the cacao tree hidden inside a mountain. He fought to get it out. Then he gave it to humans as a gift. But it was a gift with rules. It was not meant for just anyone. In the myth, the gods almost destroyed humanity for misusing what they had been given. Chocolate, even in legend, came with a warning label. Centuries later, the Aztec Empire rose to power. And the Aztecs took this idea even further. They did not just drink chocolate. They used cacao beans as money. Real, actual currency. Historical records tell us a single cacao bean could buy you a tomato in the market. Small rabbit might cost around 30 beans. A slave could be bought for around 100 beans. People even tried to cheat the system. Some would hollow out a cacao shell and stuff it with mud or sand, then try to spend it like a real bean. That is how valuable these seeds had become. Guards at some markets had to check bags of beans by hand, just to catch the cheaters. The Aztecs demanded cacao as tribute from the lands they conquered. Warehouses in their capital city held massive stockpiles of beans, collected from all across the empire. Some regions were forced to send tens of thousands of beans every single year, simply as tax. And drinking chocolate was mostly reserved for the elite. Regular warriors might get a small ration during battle, because people believed it gave strength and energy. But common citizens, especially women and children, were usually forbidden from drinking it at all. Breaking that rule could bring real punishment. Chocolate also played a role in Aztec diplomacy. When rulers from different city-states met to discuss treaties, marriages, or alliances, chocolate was often served as part of the ceremony. Sharing a cup with another ruler was a way of showing respect, almost like a handshake made of foam and spice. Using the cup could be seen as an insult. Accepting it meant you recognized the other person's power as equal to your own. Spaniards later claimed that Moctezuma himself drank dozens of cups a day, flavored with vanilla, flavored with chili, served in golden cups that were used once, then thrown away forever. We do not know if every detail of that story is perfectly true. Spanish visitors were often shocked and may have exaggerated what they saw, but the core idea stayed the same across every account. Chocolate was a symbol of power. If you drank it in public, you were telling everyone around you exactly how important you were. It worked almost like a crown you could sip. Then in 1519, everything changed. A Spanish soldier named Hernán Cortés arrived in the Aztec Empire. He came looking for gold and silver. But he also found this strange drink that the nobles prized above almost everything else. First, the Spanish were not impressed. Records describe their reaction as confusion, even disgust. The drink was thick, it was bitter, spiced with chili peppers. It tasted nothing like the sweet hot chocolate we know today. One Spanish writer even compared it to a drink fit for pigs, not men. But everything changed once the Aztec capital fell. When Spanish forces finally took the city of Tenochtitlan, they found something they had not expected inside the royal storerooms of cacao beans, stacked and guarded like treasure. To the Aztecs, this was wealth beyond measure. To the Spanish, it was strange at first. Strange or not, they understood status when they saw it. If an entire empire treated a drink as sacred, there had to be something valuable about it. So cacao beans made the long trip across the ocean, back to Spain, packed away like gold. And in Spain, someone made one small change that altered chocolate forever. They added sugar. That single addition turned a bitter ceremonial drink into something rich, sweet, and instantly addictive to European taste buds. Spanish royal family treated the recipe like a state secret. For almost 100 years, chocolate stayed locked inside the Spanish royal court and inside monasteries. Monks were often the ones trusted with grinding and preparing it, since they were seen as reliable and quiet. Other European countries barely even knew how it was made, so it could become a royal secret twice over. First for Aztec emperors, now for Spanish kings. But secrets do not last forever. 1615, a Spanish princess named Anne of Austria married King Louis XIII of France. She is widely credited with bringing chocolate drinking into the French royal court. From there, it spread through the noble families of Europe, like a very expensive rumor passed from palace to palace. Soon, chocolate the height of fashion for royalty everywhere. In Paris, in London, it was still incredibly expensive, still heavily taxed, still completely out of reach for ordinary families. A single serving could cost more than a laborer earned in a week. Once European doctors got involved, things got even stranger. For decades, physicians argued about whether chocolate was medicine or poison. Some doctors prescribed it for weak stomachs and tired nerves. Other doctors warned it overheated the blood and caused wild behavior. Some royal courts even had their own physicians test each new batch before the king or queen was allowed to drink it. And chocolate picked up a reputation as a drink of romance. The famous adventurer Casanova was said to drink chocolate before his evening meetings, believing it made him more charming. True or not, the rumor alone tells you how mysterious and powerful people believed this drink to be. In England, special chocolate houses began opening in the mid-1600s. The most famous one was called White's. It opened in London in 1693. It became such an exclusive meeting place for the rich and powerful that, over time, it turned into one of the most elite private clubs in all of Britain, and its entire legacy traces back to something as simple as a cup of imported chocolate. A cup that ordinary Londoners could never dream of affording. Its members gambled fortunes inside those walls, all while sipping the same drink an Aztec emperor once guarded so closely. Even one of history's most famous figures was tangled up with royal chocolate. When Marie Antoinette married the future King Louis XVI of France, she brought her own personal chocolate maker with her to the Palace of Versailles. Sad is how seriously European royalty took their chocolate. It was not just a drink. It was a status symbol worthy of its own private staff, its own recipes, and its own secrets kept from rival courts. Chocolate eventually crossed the Atlantic again, this time heading north. In the American colonies, chocolate was still a luxury, but it was slowly becoming more available to wealthy merchants and landowners, not just royalty. 1765, the first chocolate factory in America opened near Boston, a company that would later be known as Baker's Chocolate. Thomas Jefferson, tasting chocolate while serving as a diplomat in Europe, wrote that he believed it would soon become more popular in America than tea or coffee. He was still centuries away from being right for the average family, but the seed of an idea had been planted. It was slowly stepping down from the throne room, one wealthy household at a time. For roughly 200 years, chocolate remained a drink, not a food, and it remained a luxury, locked away for the wealthy. That began to change with a wave of new machines during the Industrial Revolution. And once machines got involved, chocolate's whole future changed direction. In 1828, a Dutch chemist named Coenraad van Houten invented a special press. This press could squeeze the fatty butter out of roasted cacao beans. What was left behind was a dry cake. That cake could be ground into a fine powder. Chemists also learned to treat this powder with a special process, smoothing out its natural bitterness. This process is still called Dutching today. Suddenly, chocolate powder could be mixed easily with hot water or milk. No more grinding whole beans by hand for an entire hour. Chocolate could now be made in minutes, and it could be made in factories at massive scale for the very first time. Then, in 1847, a British chocolate maker named Joseph Fry made an even bigger discovery. He found that mixing cocoa powder, sugar, and melted cocoa butter created a soft paste, and that paste, once cooled, hardened into a solid bar. For the first time in almost 3,000 years, chocolate stopped being something you drank. It became something you could hold in your hand, something you could simply eat without a cup, without a servant, without a ritual. Fry's company began mass-producing these bars, and competitors moved fast. In England, the Cadbury brothers built their own chocolate empire, eventually creating Cadbury Dairy Milk, a bar that is still sold around the world today. Switzerland, a chocolatier named Daniel Peter teamed up with a company called Nestlé and figured out how to blend chocolate with milk, creating the world's first milk chocolate in 1875. Swiss makers followed, building the small mountain country into a name still linked with fine chocolate today. In 1908, a Swiss company introduced a triangular bar called Toblerone, its shape supposedly inspired by the mountains of the Alps. And in the United States, a man named Milton Hershey built an entire town in Pennsylvania around one simple mission: to make chocolate cheap. Make it available to everyone. His mission worked so well that, by the early 1900s, a chocolate bar cost about a nickel at any drugstore counter in America. Emperors once believed was too sacred for common hands. Around this same time, scientists were still trying to understand exactly what made cacao so special. 1753, a Swedish scientist named Carl Linnaeus gave the cacao tree its official scientific name. He called it Theobroma cacao. In Greek, Theobroma means food of the gods. Even a scientist, writing in cold, formal Latin categories, could not resist admitting that this plant felt like something sacred. 3,000 years after the Olmec first fermented those bitter seeds, a European naturalist gave their discovery a name that still whispered the same old idea. This was never just food. The story does not stop there. During both World Wars, chocolate bars were specifically designed as military rations. Soldiers needed quick calories and a boost to morale, far from home. The United States Army even asked Hershey to design a special heat-resistant chocolate bar for soldiers to carry into combat. Seat was made tough on purpose, so soldiers would not eat it too quickly and would save it for emergencies. Soldiers nicknamed one version of this bar after a common insult, simply because it tasted so plain and hard. Around the same time, a young businessman named Forrest Mars noticed soldiers in Spain eating small pellets of chocolate coated in a hard sugar shell, so the chocolate would not melt in their hands. He brought the idea home to America, and in 1941 that idea became a small, colorful candy that is still one of the best-selling treats in the world today. Still, millions of men carried these small pieces of chocolate, once reserved only for gods and emperors, tucked inside their uniform pockets on the front lines of 2 world wars. After the wars ended, chocolate spread even faster. Factories grew larger, shipping got cheaper. Refrigeration meant bars could survive long trips without melting. What was once a slow trade route across an ocean became a global supply chain, moving beans by the shipload. Countries that had never grown a single cacao tree became some of the biggest chocolate-eating nations on the planet today. The numbers are almost impossible to imagine. The world produces millions of metric tons of chocolate every single year. Most of the cacao beans come from West Africa, especially the countries of Ivory Coast and Ghana. More comes from Indonesia, Ecuador, and Brazil. Candy bar that costs less than a cup of coffee sits on shelves in nearly every country on the planet. Children buy it on their way home from school without a single thought. Entire holidays, like Halloween and Valentine's Day, now revolve partly around handing out something that ancient rulers once treated as too sacred to share. Grocery store shelves today stretch for entire aisles, filled with dozens of brands, all fighting for a few coins from a shopper who barely glances at the price. Chocolate now gets melted into cereal, baked into cookies, poured over ice cream, and shaped into hollow rabbits and hearts for holidays that did not even exist when this drink first appeared. Seed has become so ordinary that most people never stop to ask where it came from, or why it exists at all. Strange to picture that next to a golden cup, used once by an emperor, and then destroyed forever, or a single bean, valuable enough to buy dinner in a market that no longer even exists. But the connection between those two images has never actually broken. Small chocolate makers today, in Belgium, in Switzerland, in France, still handcraft rich, single-origin bars using old techniques passed down for generations. This newer wave of small companies, often called bean-to-bar makers, buy their beans directly from small farmers instead of large trading companies. They roast, grind, and shape every bar themselves, in small batches, almost the way a single household might have done it centuries ago. Some even print the name of the exact farm the beans came from right on the wrapper, treating a single origin the way a wine bottle treats a vineyard. Fair trade labels on chocolate wrappers exist today because for a long time, the farmers growing cacao earned almost nothing, while companies far away earned fortunes selling the finished bars. That imbalance still exists in many places, and it remains one of the more uncomfortable truths behind a very sweet product. Same crop that once crowned emperors and funded royal courts still, in some regions, barely pays the people who grow it enough to live comfortably. This is a strange kind of injustice, hidden behind a wrapper with a smiling cartoon on it. And scientists are still finding old pottery, still tracing that same chemical signature back thousands of years to the very first cup ever made in the jungles of ancient Mexico. Every few years, another dig turns up another old cup, another trace of theobromine, pushing the known history of chocolate a little further back in time. The story is technically still being uncovered, one broken piece of pottery at a time. History is full of things that were once reserved only for the powerful. Purple dye was once so rare that only emperors were legally allowed to wear it. Silk once traveled thousands of miles along secret trade routes, guarded as closely as any weapon. Salt was once precious enough that soldiers were partly paid in it. Chocolate belongs on that same short list. It was never just a snack waiting to be discovered. Seat was a luxury that had to be pulled, piece by piece, out of the hands of the people who guarded it the tightest. For most of its long life, chocolate was never meant for you. It was meant for gods, for emperors, for warriors returning home victorious, for kings sealing alliances over a foaming golden cup. The fact that it now sits within arm's reach at every checkout counter on Earth is not simply the natural order of things. It took emperors falling, secrets leaking out of royal courts, new machines being invented in Dutch workshops and English factories, and centuries of a single drink slowly, stubbornly working its way down from a royal throne room to your kitchen table. So the next time you unwrap a chocolate bar without a second thought, remember something. For nearly 3,000 years, that same simple pleasure sitting in your hand would have required royal blood, imperial permission, or a small fortune to obtain. Kings guarded it. Empires taxed it. Nations kept it secret from each other. Still, somehow, it found its way out. Moctezuma drank from a golden cup and threw it away after a single use. You can walk into almost any store on Earth today, hand over a single coin, and hold that same taste in your palms. Nobody has to kneel. Nobody has to ask permission. The throne room is gone, but the drink survived it, and it ended up, of all places, in your pocket. That old royal secret is still being written today, one bar at a time.